the main topic is how blockchain allows for more equitable payments across the internet. And I want to start off by asking you all if we had any thoughts on what do we feel like might be the internet's original sin? Any ideas, anyone?
I would say that the internet's original sin was that there wasn't like about ownership. Like it didn't really include ownership, and I guess for everybody, it was more centralized applications had ownership instead of it wasn't
Definitely, yeah. Centralization is definitely a huge issue.
I think going off of the word equitable, how it was only available to certain groups of people. Like, for instance, when my mom talks about it sometimes when she's she didn't understand email. She didn't send her first email for a while after it came out, so it's the disparities between, and it's understandable, right, because of the hardware and all the money that goes into it, but also it's to this day people are at a disadvantage because of the lack of technicality in whatever nation they're in, whatever community was left behind because it wasn't profitable.
Absolutely, and I think that what you touched on is the lack of technical skills makes it difficult for people to get by and function in some of the earlier stages of the internet, and that's something that hopefully we're going to be able to get right this time around with Web 3.0. So what a lot of people have said who have worked on the internet in the early 90s through the 2000s that are now working on Web 3.0 is that the biggest sin was that they didn't have a native payment system in browsers. There was no way to pay the people for the ads and the content that you were viewing. So does anyone have any thoughts on how this might influence how the internet is shaped moving forward, us not having a native payment system? What about any kind of revenue options? How can you make money on the internet if you weren't able to accept payment? Mehdi?
Yeah, so the way I see it is, people have to make money, companies have to make money. Those people that develop those browsers, they have to make money some way or another. And I guess one way they've been doing it is through advertisement, especially, how can I say this, personal advertisement where they use your personal data to give you better ads. So yeah, they're harvesting your data instead of, that's how they make their money basically. They're taking your data and selling it to a third party.
Absolutely, Mehdi, absolutely right. So the side effect of that is that advertising became the default model to support online content and services. Some of the side effects of this were that pop-up ads and banners are littering the internet to this day. Does anyone have any idea why pop-up ads were even invented to begin with? It was because advertisers were sick of their products or their ads being associated with random videos on the internet. So you'd be watching something that was maybe a little scandalous, and Ford doesn't want their ad to be on the same page, so they decided, let's have pop-up ads so that people could better disassociate. But as we can see, everyone hates pop-up ads, and they're one of the worst things about the internet to this day. The other side effect, or another one rather, would be that the most profitable companies on the internet were those who could best target advertisers. And the best way to target advertisers would be to collect and harvest data so that you can target people the best. That means that Facebook, Google dominate because users voluntarily upload informational content about themselves. This content is owned and controlled by Facebook and Google, not the user. When you upload photos to Instagram then owns those photos and can do what they want with them, and you have no chance to monetize that whatsoever. And you're essentially paying for the privilege with your attention of using these services, even though they are technically free. We can see that big tech and big data is constantly increasing the surveillance of users at the expense of privacy. If your business model is centered around advertising, the only way to become more and more profitable is to become better and better at surveilling people. So there's a really, really poor alignment in the model that we have in the internet right now. So what does this mean for users and creators? There are some good things that came of it. The internet was essentially free for all because no one had to pay to view certain pages. You could just watch ads, and that way people could get rewarded for their content that way. It did essentially make the internet somewhat free, but it's not free in the sense that you're essentially paying for it with your attention. You're watching these ads non-voluntarily and that's something that is definitely a big issue. And it also did allow for rapid expansion of the internet. When you don't have to pay for something and you can just send anyone a link and anyone can view a page, that means that things can grow exponentially, but it doesn't necessarily reward the right kind of content. We can see that it is incentivized clicks and page views over thoughtful engagement. I mean, so a niche artist that has maybe 50 subscribers is going to have to expand into more and more clickbaity things, more and more things that are gonna get mass adoption, mass users, mass views, as opposed to something that's very, very thoughtfully, carefully designed out for a very small community. So that's something to think about. It also promotes centralization, because this means that we have to rely on the Googles, the Amazons, the Facebooks to provide all these advertising platforms. If you want to advertise on a lot of pages, you're not really gonna reach out to the little creator and say this, oh, I can advertise on your page for this. You're gonna go to the big ones that can better target people through their surveillance. And it's also created a warped version of the internet, essentially against users' will. A conservative and a liberal person are going to get two completely different search engine results when they Google something. Same thing with their Facebook page or their Instagram page, or even what you're searching for. I mean, if I search for something fitness related, I could get something completely different than someone that Google thinks is a different person than me. And that's something that might not sit well with a lot of people. So what we're gonna do today is look at 4 main companies that are kind of trying to flip the script on this and work toward more equitable payment systems moving forward in Web 3.0. And the first one, which is what I did last semester, was the Brave web browser. Now, the vision behind this project was that it wanted to be a browser that would give users full control over data and privacy. And it would do this by cutting out bloated and unethical middlemen. Instead of surveilling everyone that uses the project, they were going to give users the option of privacy built in. This is done through the Brave browser in combination with the BAT token. BAT token is a business model that rewards creators and improves advertising inefficiencies. So we'll go into the details of how that works a little bit later. But the main features and benefits of the browser is that it is privacy dedicated. It comes with a default comprehensive ad blocker. So not only does it block pop-ups, does it block banners, but it also blocks third-party cookies that are tracking you across sites. So it is been rated the #1 browser in every standard for privacy. It also has an independent search engine. I think most of us have probably heard of DuckDuckGo, and how that's a search browser that is neutral. It doesn't sway you any one shape or the other depending on what it thinks you are. And the Brave now has a default search engine that is built on their own network that doesn't sway the results based on who they think you are. It also has the option for a VPN built in, and it is open source. It's built on what's called Chromium, which is the open source software that is backing Chrome. So it has a very, very similar user experience, but because it doesn't allow any of these pop-ups, any of these ads, any of these videos that are constantly going, all these trackers that are following you throughout the internet, it can be up to 3 times faster than Chrome. And I can very much attest to this. I've been using Brave on and off for the past year, and it definitely has a lot faster than Chrome, even if it has some fallbacks, which we'll get to. The other thing that it allows you to do is it earns BAT tokens for voluntarily browsing ads. So when you first download the browser, you don't even think about ads, there are none to exist. But if you select, I'd like to watch ads, and I'd like to watch 5 ads per page, you'll be rewarded in BAT tokens for your attention in viewing those ads. And you can earn anywhere from $1 to up to $20 to $50 a month, depending on how heavily you're watching these ads and what kind of engagement the software is gauging based on that. And these basic attention tokens are ERC20 tokens built on Ethereum. So how does BAT use smart contracts and oracles? So they're actually working on a way out of this, but for the time being, they use smart contracts in conjunction with Chainlink, you can see, to do these auctions that are open source and transparent. So anyone that applies to advertise on a page can see exactly what kind of viewership they're gonna get, what kind of engagement they have, and they're bidding against other people that they can actually see. This is in stark contrast to Facebook, Google, Amazon. All of them have been sued over the past few years because they've been lying to people about the type of engagement, the type of viewership they're getting. I think Facebook one time claimed they were getting billions of views on all their videos, but they were counting like half a second of a view as watching the entire video. So they're misleading advertisers. So this is a much more transparent system. And you can kind of visualize here how these oracles go into play. So these auctions happen off-chain with these oracles, and then on-chain, the aggregators decide what ads are placed where using zero-knowledge proofs, which we'll also get into later. So the key role of the BAT is it is a utility token for this decentralized ad exchange, and it compensates browser user attention while protecting privacy. It facilitates the transactions and services for all these ads between advertisers and people that are willing and able to view these ads. Any questions so far?
So like everyone can decide how much advertising they want to watch, or like if they don't want to watch any advertising, they just don't get rewarded from?
Absolutely. So you have the option to, so everything with regard to the BAT token is completely optionary. You don't have to use their wallet, you don't have to use any of these services. It's completely voluntary.
Okay, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
Do they have like domains for like the sites and stuff like that? Like how Google has domains like .coms and stuff?
No, so the way that they do it actually is when you view ads on a page, if that specific creator or that company hasn't opted in yet, the Brave browser and the BAT token holds on to those tokens and is willing to gift them to the user when they subscribe in. So for example, we'll get into it a little bit later, but Mr. Beast had tens of thousands of BAT tokens just collecting over the past year that he didn't even know about. So when he learned about it and opted in to start accepting these awards, he became an advocate for Brave, and he accepted all these tokens that he'd been accruing over time that he didn't even know for people viewing ads on his videos that were using the Brave browser.
So we get also the creator of it gets like the money.
Mm-hmm, absolutely, yeah. We'll get into the value flow of it actually right now. So you can see that the advertisers are what drive this. So they they purchase these BAT tokens, which are used to spend across advertising. The users get a portion of that for the attention that they spent viewing these ads. So for example, if someone spends $1 on an ad, the user might get rewarded with 10 cents of that, and 90% of it could go directly back to the creator, and a small percentage of it would go to Brave, if that makes sense. You also have the option of tipping creators specifically. For example, I have a YouTube basketball channel that I really like subscribing to, and he's pretty small, I mean under 1,000 subscribers, and I've watched pretty much every single one of his videos. I've watched ads on all of his videos, and I have it set to where I passively donate all of the attention that I've used watching those ads, directly funneling it to him, to reward him for the content that he has been producing, because otherwise he's a small creator, he might not get as much, but I can direct my BAT tokens specifically to him because I love the content he produces.
But he has to use Brave for that, or
He would have to opt in if he wanted to be accepting those BAT tokens.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. So when we look at some of the third-party integration that's been happening, the TAP network is a stablecoin, and that enables BAT redemption within the network. So that's a partnership they have at the moment. They also partnered with Coinbase in their Earn program. So if anyone here has the Coinbase app, I'm not sure if it's still active, but at one point you could learn and take a lesson on the BAT token in the Brave browser, and they would gift you a few BAT tokens for learning about that sort of thing. They are also working with Compound as a DeFi project in their lending ecosystem, and I know we got into a discussion about staking a few classes ago, so I'm not sure how we all land on that, but you can stake BAT tokens and earn anywhere from 4% to 10% APR just by releasing those BAT tokens into these decentralized and centralized exchanges. And with the centralized exchange, you can purchase BAT at crypto.com, as well as just about any centralized exchange out there. And they're also working on partnerships with Visa Card and CO to be able to purchase digital assets as well. So some of the other current use cases that we can see, they have the Brave search engine that we had discussed. They also have Brave Talk, which is essentially Zoom, or it's a Google Voice that they have. You can purchase gift cards through BAT tokens across a number of different platforms. And they also have the Brave Wallet, which has some really, really interesting characteristics that we'll discuss. And just to kind of summarize the blockchain-based advertising model, the Brave browser blocks ads and trackers, it improves privacy, it can prevent publishers from being hurt, prevents abuse of users, saves advertisers from the loss in deceitful advertising statistics from the big tech companies, as well as increasing speed across the platform, because when you don't get bogged down with all the advertising cookies, third-party trackers and such. Just to kind of reinforce, a lot of the partnerships that they have are with big companies such as Coinbase, Binance, Gemini, FTX, and the advertisers that have been using the Brave browser, BlockFi, Nexo, BitPay, Upland, a lot of the big players. And so when we look at existing partnerships with on the creator and the publisher side of things, Mr. Brave is a great example. So for the videos that he produces, instead of him having to trust Google in what kind of viewership that they said, he can opt into the Brave browser and see open source exactly who's viewing it and who can tip him directly for the content he produces. So I think that this is one of the reasons that I'm very, very optimistic about the adoption of creators with the Brave browser, because all you have to do is sign in and you instantly get all the tokens that you've been accumulating over time by people watching ads on your pages, if that makes sense. Yeah. So when we look at the competition that the Brave faces in the space, I was actually on a call with the CEO, Brandon Aish, and he was able to help me understand the question a little bit better. So I'll play you the clip from the discussion we had. Do you feel like you have any competition either on the blockchain or outside of it in the realm that you talked about, where you want to maximize both privacy and convenience for the customer? Do you feel like you guys are in a space of your own in that sense?
The goal was to make us a new category in a new world, sort of like, getting away from the old world of Europe during the Age of Discovery, and you land on a whole new continent. But it's not like everything we've done is super, unforeseen or unthought of. So other people are trying pieces of it. I haven't seen anybody really take it on as we have. I mentioned extensions when somebody asked about extension stores. It's really hard to get adoption, and also it's hard to get them into the store if Google's kind of adversarial toward what you're doing, if they're against crypto or if they're against deep, what I would call deep packet ad blocking and tracking protection like uBlock Origin does. Google has announced they're going to retire the current ad blocking tracking protection sort of network thread scripting API, the extensions like uBlock Origin, things like uMatrix use, and that's going to break them. It's going to break not all of them, but it's going to break their important differentiated value adds, and Google doesn't care. So I think you have to look at somebody doing the browser. Now, there are people who then look at us and say, oh, we'll just fork you. So there's what was that competitor on the Dragon's Den show in the UK? And, Gab tried it and pretty much failed to maintain the code. It's horribly insecure. I don't think it has many users. But it's hard to, even if you have open source, to really keep it secure, keep it patched up, keep it evolving. Code is like a shark. It has to move forward or it dies. And that takes a big team. So that's hard. There are things like the Mighty app, which I guess is out now, which is cloud browsing, which we've seen before, all the way back to Andy Rubin's Danger Incorporated before he did Android. And Opera Mini did a cloud browser. And it can work for some content, but it falls down on other content and has to render it locally with the full stack, JavaScript and everything. And so it depends on how much of the content you use can be optimized in the cloud. It also can be a privacy problem on its own because it's doing headless browsing in the cloud. So it's terminating the TLS connection there. It's seeing all your health and bank data, all your secrets. High trust. Not something I want to use for my personal use. I could see how it could do well at enterprise settings because the IT department already wants to control your data that way. So Mighty's interesting. We'll keep an eye on that. And we can do cloud browsing too if we need to. I think it's more of a mode. It's a modality on what we do. It's like something to switch to when it wins, but it should be a transparent optimization. It should not be the entire business plan.
Did anyone have any idea what he was talking about? Because I definitely didn't when I first heard his answer to that. Wonderful. So the main takeaway that I got from this is that I don't think that Brave is going to reach too much competition, especially from a startup. I mean, I could see maybe if one of the Firefoxes, the Mozillas, the Internet Explorer, if they wanted to pivot toward the Web 3.0, more of that kind of standard, they might have a chance. But the reason that they can differentiate themselves so much, and we'll kind of discuss this a little bit more later, is that they have such a big team of software developers that allows them to be on top of every privacy issue and constantly updating the software. He had mentioned that anyone, because this is open source, could just make a copy of Brave and download it, but over the next week, 2 weeks, every second you're online, someone is trying to get your information, someone is trying to hack you, someone is trying to phish you. So if you don't have this software that's constantly being managed and updated, kind of like he had said, it's like a shark. You know, if it's not being constantly updated, it's going to have these bugs, it's gonna run into issues, and it's gonna start becoming malicious. So they are really in the space of their own when it comes to competition. And he discussed these two. Again, well, like he had said, cloud browsing has a lot of great potential, but it definitely has its shortcomings in a lot of senses. Any other thoughts on competition before we moved on?
Wasn't he talking about too how their biggest competitor is basically extensions like Chrome or Firefox?
Absolutely, yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how Google plays with those, because obviously Google is fully aware that these ad browsers are eating away at their revenue, and they're constantly, but it's kind of like playing whack-a-mole with these ad browsers, if that makes sense. You know, it's very difficult for them at being such a big browser to take down each and every one, even though he says that that's actively what they're attempting to do. But I mean, even just something that only blocks ads, it might not necessarily block the third-party extensions that are trying to track you across sites. So it's not a complete solution like the Brave browser is. All right, so I think it's really helpful to take a look at how the internet browser market share has kind of transformed over time. And where we are today, you know, this only goes to 2018, but it's pretty similar in that Google Chrome has dominated the space in the last few years. And I'm pretty sure almost everyone here uses Chrome. I mean, they have the Google Suite. It's all well integrated, and the value proposition that Chrome provides people is great, but it's at the expense of user privacy and big data collection. And that's something that we've all just kind of become accustomed to accepting, that's a way of being in the internet moving forward, but hopefully Brave has a chance to solve that. So when we look at the user adoption of Brave, there's a good and a bad side of things. This is their 5 years of user growth, and they're growing rapidly, almost 200%, a little bit over that on a year-to-year basis. And so just recently at the end of the year, they said they had 50 million monthly users, which is incredible. But the downside of it is that that's where it has gotten them in terms of overall market share. I had to make it bigger so you could see it. So they have a long way to go, but I think that as long as they keep improving day by day, they will have a chance at really being at the forefront of the Web 3.0. If it will not take a very, very long time for them to eat into Chrome's market share. I mean, you can see Firefox there, Internet Explorer. I think that is Mozilla maybe over there. They've got a long way to go. But so some of the things that they're currently working on that are going to help them get there, a lot of improvements are being made to the Brave wallet that they've created recently. So right now it only supports Ethereum, but it's going to add support for Bitcoin, Polygon, and they're actively researching how they can integrate it in with more layer 2s. They're actively looking into a self-custodial option for every Brave wallet, and they also have something called a Brave Swap. So they're looking into how they can integrate the wallet in with swapping out different tokens as they start to implement more and more tokens. And something called the Themis project is really a massive undertaking. So I talked about how they're using oracles right now to facilitate all of the auctions for the advertising space, but what they want to transition from, these is the traditional oracle, They want to start using side chains and open source blockchains to be the driving force behind that. That's going to help them with scalability as well as a pledge to be more decentralized, because when you use an auction on an oracle, that is a level that you do have to be trusting a third party, something you might not have a full access to what's going on. So that's one of their big undertakings, and it's really happy to see, because I think oftentimes what we've talked about is that when you have a centralized company, it can be very quick and easy to go fast, to make great things happen. But when you decentralize, it can make things chaotic, it can be slow, you can be moving in different directions. So for a centralized company like Brave to be pledging at every step of the way to how can we actively become more decentralized over time, I think is a great sign for them moving forward. Any other questions on the Brave browser before we move on to a different company?
I guess I'm just wondering, how exactly does the auction part of it work? Do they use utility tokens or something along those lines to make sure certain ads are placed on certain pages? I'm not really sure how that works.
Yeah, so when an advertiser wants to place an ad, they purchase these BAT tokens that they'll have to have as collateral. And when they auction, or when they enter the auction for this ad space, that actually doesn't send the money right away. It gets sent piece by piece as viewers are watching the ad. So it's all instantaneous through those smart contracts.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they're going to be able to use the Brave wallet to kind of create a profile character within like the web interface to like navigate in certain websites, and then also just immediately purchase and sell things?
Yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, it would be a brilliant idea. I think it would be really neat. Rather than using your email address and log into Google Chrome, you'd be using your Brave wallet to log into your Brave browser.
Absolutely, that would be really cool. And I know right now they're partnered with Metamasks, so there's compatibility through that. And it'll be obviously very, very interesting to see how they use it moving forward, because I definitely think the Brave wallet, how it is able to interact with the Brave browser is a huge path for them moving forward to kind of compete with the Chrome and MetaMask partnership kind of on the other aisle of things.
Is Metamask a competitor? Because they also have like a search, like you can also search on Metamask. Isn't like, I don't know, like there's like the swaps like on other websites. I don't know if it's a competitor.
Definitely. I mean, you could consider them a competitor, but I think all of this stuff is so much in its infancy that there's plenty of room for both of them to grow side by side. All right.
Yeah, Scotty, I was just gonna, actually on the same point, I was wondering the same thing myself. It seems like there's a lot of parallels between Metamask's business model and Brave, the slight difference being that Metamask kind of started off as a wallet, but they have this browser, feature to it, where this started off as a browser. But I think the question in my mind is do you happen to know whether MetaMask also has that same decentralized advertising model that Brave browser does?
I don't believe so. I mean, I don't think that Chrome is going to be, looking forward to any kind of decentralized ad platforms on their browser in the near future either.
Okay, so that is different then.
Mm-hmm.
Just last question. You brought up a really, really interesting point about their hopes of adding Brave Swap, and I guess that just I have a question about that. It's about the fact that there's so many different wallets for so many different blockchains. Do you think Brave should look at being more interoperable between, for example, Solana and Ethereum? Like, for example, now if you want to hold Solana, you need to have a Phantom wallet or something along those lines, and you can't really use MetaMask. So yeah, do you see them moving towards that direction?
Yeah, it's difficult to say. I think that we discussed kind of the contrast between blockchains that are more siloed and blockchains that have more interoperability. And I would say that Brave might lend itself more to being siloed, because I think the vision for the BAT token is having it be more so the pathway to interacting with the internet moving forward. I don't think many people would be viewing ads constantly, reaping these rewards. I mean, you're not making that much money. I think the most I've made in a month is $5, and I usually use that money to just tip out my favorite creators or reward content that I see. So I think that they're probably leaning more toward keeping things in their own system. But definitely, as things expand, of course, I mean, they'd be silly not to look into interoperability options moving forward as well.
Yeah, just look it up. Like the circulating supply is already like 100%. So they're not just printing the bad tokens. Like they're really like giving them away. Like not like other companies that they're just printing more of them and giving them away.
I don't believe they're at 100% issuance quite yet, are they?
That's what it was on Coinbase. I don't know. I can look it up again. I will look it up on CoinMarket.
Well, that'd be great. And I know they do have some deflationary measures built into the token as well. But I haven't done a deep dive on the tokenomics of it quite yet.
I was just thinking, Mehdi, I remember we had this one discussion about how there could be a cool feature where you can swap a single NFT on multiple different auction platforms, or like OpenSea and then or Solana or whatever. What if you could basically send an NFT to your Brave wallet, and then you can actually like attach the Brave wallet to any one of the NFT marketplaces, and then you could just immediately disperse that NFT data just to figure out who wants to buy it from which site, and then Brave can actually like notify you when your NFT was purchased. I don't know. I think that it's possible.
And I do know they are also working on NFT integration into the wallet as well.
That's sick.
So I mean, they're just getting started with everything. Anything else on Brave? All right. So the next company we're going to be looking at is Filecoin. I think we had touched a little bit on it and how it's a decentralized file storage company. And one of our classmates, actually Margot, did a wonderful presentation. So I'm going to let her explain it.
Today, we're starting things off with Filecoin, which is a decentralized storage network designed to store humanity's most important information according to their mission statement. Fun fact, and why you should care, in 2015, Filecoin's ICO raised $257 million from very well-known investors, and it was the biggest ICO at the time. Protocol Labs, which is the company behind Filecoin, was founded by Juan Bennett in 2014, and then went on to launch IPFS, Interplanetary File System, in 2015, which is the base layer and the non-incentivized version of Filecoin. First, what is Filecoin? Filecoin is like the Airbnb of data storage. The platform connects consumers and providers of storage through two markets, the storage market and the retrieval market. The storage market allows clients to select a provider of storage among several bidders, which guarantees the most competitive and fairest price. Then, the client and provider sign a deal which is submitted to the blockchain, and the provider is incentivized to provide storage by earning tokens. On the other hand, the retrieval market spreads data to where demand is growing, making information accessible to anyone who wants it. All the client needs to do is choose a provider, the most affordable or the fastest maybe, and pay the retrieval fee in the form of a micropayment, and he has the data. Why would anyone want to use Filecoin instead of a more common data storage option like Google or Amazon are so-called trusted companies? Well, the answer is transparency. Filecoin, as part of a blockchain network, does not require trust. You don't need to trust Filecoin because everything is in the form of verifiable computation. That's what we call trustless, and it is one of the big advantages of blockchain. Secondly, Filecoin is a free market, meaning that the users are at the center of the platform. Even in terms of ownership, the market itself is not owned or controlled by Protocol Labs, Filecoin, or IPFS. This ensures fair competition and prices for the users. And finally, the last characteristic I will point out is its resilience. We traditionally use location addressing, which is finding something relying on where it is, which often leads to error 404 or page not found. However, Filecoin uses content addressing, where the content of the data is the criteria for finding it rather than its location. So trustlessness, resilience, and fairness are three of the main characteristics while Filecoin is better as a decentralized storage solution. But then again, why Filecoin and not other decentralized storage providers like Arweave or Storage? First, they use novel proof of storage like proof of spacetime and proof of replication. So proof of replication asks miners to provide a public proof that a unique encoding of the data exists in their physical storage, while proof of spacetime allows for verifiers to check if a miner is storing their data for an extended period of time, which can be done at random. This ensures Filecoin's fiability. For example, they are collaborating with Ethereum and Electric Coin Co. on Halo 2, which is a solution to zero-knowledge recursive proofs without requiring a trusted setup. So Halo is the name of Electric Coin's zero-knowledge recursive proof research. Let's break that down. Zero-knowledge proofs are a way to verify data without having access to the data, and thus leads to better privacy. Consider the example of needing to prove your age at a bar. In zero-knowledge transaction, there are two parties, the prover and the provider. In the bar example, the prover is you, trying to prove that you are of legal age, and the verifier is the bartender. In a zero-knowledge transaction, the bartender does not need to see your ID or know your precise age to know that you are above 21. They would simply be able to trust the situation without seeing the underlying data. Recursive means that to check a transaction, you don't have to check each prior block. It is a proof of a proof, so only a small number of proofs need to be verified. As it is more efficient, it allows transaction aggregation and succinct blockchain. By leveraging Halo 2, the amount of proof data stored on-chain in Filecoin can be significantly reduced. The main and primary benefit is scalability, making the platform really accessible to everyone because large numbers of users can interact with the platform inexpensively and efficiently. Right now, the most used blockchain is Ethereum. Filecoin's collaboration with Ethereum is essential because it brings smart contracts on the network. This is a crucial benefit to Filecoin as smart contracts broaden the capabilities on the network. So as we've discussed today, as a storage network, Filecoin places itself as a cornerstone of Web 3.0 since we all use and need data storage whether we want it or not.
Awesome. So Filecoin follows a very, very similar trend, and we're going to see it in the next couple companies we see as well, where we used to have to need these massive third parties to facilitate payments and processing power between users and advertisers or people that needed services. But these new technologies and these new softwares are allowing us to cut out those middlemen and give the transactional power back to between users on the internet. Any other questions on Filecoin before we touch on something else?
So if I was looking to have data storage for my company, what would be the advantages of going for Filecoin versus a already established company, for example, a Snowflake?
Definitely. So I think that the biggest one that I would say is that because it is decentralized, it can't go down. There's no one party that has your data. Earlier this year, we had Facebook, their servers went down for, was it 3-4 hours, and campus basically shut, or was it Google maybe as well, that their services shut down and everyone couldn't do anything for 3 hours. I mean, what if you had a business and for 3-4 hours you couldn't accept payment or anything like that on your Google-based payment system? So I guess if that makes sense. And the other thing, again, transparency. Sure, Google and Amazon might be able to offer you the best rate that they say with a certain speed, but this is all open source. You can see exactly what that speed is going to be. You can see exactly what the fair market rate of that is going to be without having to trust this third party that keeps the data behind closed doors.
Can every small person, like every person, give storage to the network? Like, could I do it with my computer, or does it have to be a big company?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are definitely some hardware requirements for minimum to be able to upload and to download this data, but just about anyone could be able to use this. And as the software and the technology becomes more and more sophisticated, I think those requirements might even drop moving forward, or technology will just keep getting better. Hardware processing will always keep getting better and better. I mean, look at where a processor was 10 years ago compared to it is now. So things are accelerating at a rapid rate, and it's great that we have companies like this that allow us to utilize that increasing hardware power that we all hold in our backpack and in our pocket.
You know where the most one comes from now? Like where the most like storage, like who's offering the most storage? Is it like private people or is it like Filecoin?
Oh.
Because Filecoin probably they give also storage to the network. Maybe, I don't know.
I'm not 100% sure. I would imagine that it's distributed across their validators that are processing this, but I'm not quite sure exactly how much that Filecoin themselves runs to kind of ensure the network.
So if more and more people and companies would go into blockchain alternatives like Filecoin, would that render these data storage companies obsolete?
I mean, it's difficult to say. I don't think many, like hundreds of billions of dollars companies will go, bankrupt overnight. I think they'll find a way to adapt and to prove themselves valuable. But I think that this is a great alternative for people that might have needs that wouldn't be satisfied by these big tech giants.
I had another question actually. Filecoin really reminds me of BitTorrent.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of hinted at that project early on in the class because it was the first way I was exposed to blockchain. It's very similar. People have data on their servers or computers or whatever, and then with the help of peer-to-peer connections, you're able to download that data faster, or to download, for example, pirated films or video games or stuff like that is considered illegal. Do you know if Filecoin is doing anything to step away from that and maybe add an extra layer of security?
I can't speak so much as to the legality of what files might be stored. I mean, if there's any unethical content that could be potentially stored on another person's computer, I mean, that's obviously terrible. But I imagine that everything is so heavily encrypted between transactions that I don't think that sort of data would be stored. And to kind of make the connection even further to BitTorrent, back in the day, if you had a specific movie that had a lot of people seeding it and not that many leechers, it'd be a very, very fast download. Same thing on this network, where if you have a lot of people offering up their storage and not that much demand, it could be very cheap. Whereas in the other side of things, if you had a lot of people leeching a movie and not many people seeding it, it'd be a very, very slow download and it could take a while. If there's not that many people offering up their data and there's a lot of people with demand for that data, the price of that would rise as well. So we can see that parallel work as well. Very similar technology.
100%.
Awesome. All right, so the next company we're going to look at is the Theta Network. And you can think of this as the decentralized YouTube. In fact, many of the people working on it used to work at YouTube, and especially Steve Chen, who had a great quote that kind of sums it up. Says, Theta's innovation is set to disrupt today's online video game industry much in the same way that the YouTube platform did to traditional video back in 2005. One of our biggest challenges has been the high cost of delivering video to various parts of the world, and the problem is only getting bigger with HD, 4K, and higher quality video streams. I'm excited to be a part of the next evolution of the streaming space, helping Theta create a decentralized peer-to-peer network that can offer improved video delivery at lower costs, was something he said. And I think this is a trend that you're continuing to notice, is that people that essentially built the internet in the 90s and the 2000s, 2010s, recognize the shortcomings that it has and are transitioning to the Web 3.0 industry, where things can be more equitable, more efficient, and more profitable for the actual users that are creating content. And when you look at some of the enterprise validator nodes, there's some great legitimacy with this project. I mean, Google, Sony, Samsung, Binance are all hosting validator nodes, and we'll kind of discuss the differences between some of their different node structures. Just to go over it, they raised $113 million so far, And they have team members that I've seen that are from Twitch, Microsoft, Amazon, Verizon. They have people from all over the industry that are working on this project and helping it become the best it can be. And there was a video that I saw on their website that something.
Technology today is amazing, but somehow streaming quality and load times are still terrible. Everyone has a computer with extra bandwidth to spare, especially when a machine's not being used. And now you can make money by putting that bandwidth to use thanks to Theta Token. Here's how it works. When you're watching your favorite streamer or when you're asleep, Theta Client will tap into your extra bandwidth to relay video streams to local viewers. They'll enjoy improved stream quality and loading times while you earn Theta Tokens. The more you deliver, the more you earn. With your tokens, you can send donations to your favorite streamers, unlock premium content, and buy and gift virtual items. Theta is a new blockchain built by Sliver TV, a leading esports live streaming startup based in Silicon Valley that has raised more than $17 million in venture financing, has over 2 million users, and is growing quickly. Theta completed a $20 million private token sale in early 2018 and launched its live testnet in June 2018. 3 weeks after launch, over 300,000 users from 149 different countries have shared video on the Theta testnet. Over 40% bandwidth offloaded, improved quality and reach. All thanks to you, the Theta community. Theta is a native blockchain and open source infrastructure that any partner can build on. Theta Network, next generation video delivery powered by you. Visit us at thetatoken.org.
So there's definitely a trend. I mean, again, we're seeing that this company is able to facilitate transactions between people without being in the way and collecting 50% plus of the revenues, like a YouTube or a Vimeo would. Any questions on their business model before we get into more of the node structure?
I don't know. It just seems like kind of like an extension now. Like, is there one thing just about like delivering higher bandwidth to communities that don't have it?
I think that's one of the big things they're thinking. I mean, here in the United States, or especially in the Bay Area, I don't think anyone here has problems with bandwidth or their network connection, but it's increasingly an issue in other places across the world.
Okay, but that's like the one thing, that's like their main thing though?
I think so, but also, they had said, if you don't want to have to trust a centralized company that's going to be providing everything for you, you now have an alternative that can rely on other people's. And same thing, if for the example of Filecoin, that was something that utilized extra storage space on your computer. This is something that can utilize extra processing power on your computer if you want to release it for that.
Is it the CPU? What gets worked? Is it the CPU or GPU?
So it's going to depend based on what kind of validating node that you want to be. So I guess we could discuss that right now. So when we look at their node network structure, they have edge nodes, guardian nodes, enterprise validator nodes. And the validator nodes are what propose and produce new blocks in the chain. Guardian nodes seal blocks and act as a check on malicious or otherwise non-functional validator nodes. And then the guardian nodes play important roles to protect the security of the Theta blockchain as they form a second layer defense. And then the enterprise validator nodes, the ones that were owned by Binance, Google, all these big companies, those are what do a lot of the heavy processing powers for the 4K video, the 8K, all that stuff. That's what's running it. And these smaller nodes with lesser computing power simply are validating and reaching consensus. So it's a really interesting node distribution model. Did anyone think about how this could relate to a presentation we had earlier this year and a similar company that used different networks to kind of distribute computing power in a more efficient way? It's a top 10 blockchain right now. We had a presentation on it. It was AVAX. Nice. So as we saw with AVAX, they have the exchange chain that is for consensus protocol, creates assets, exchanges assets. The platform P chain, which coordinates the validators and creates the subnets, and then the contract chain that executes the EVM contracts as well as the smart contracts across the network. So this is what increasingly I think the future of this blockchain technology is the more sophisticated these blockchains can be with delegating responsibilities depending on what kind of validating node or what kind of node you'd like to be is what can make them more efficient moving forward. If you're a massive company with big data centers that has extra processing power, you can sign up to be an enterprise node, and that's going to reap great rewards. If you have a laptop and you just want to be reaching consensus on some things and get a little bit, there's also an option to be that kind of node as well in this future. If does that make sense? Kind of how the networks and the validator nodes are distributed. All right. Anyone have any thoughts on how this relates to Ethereum moving forward and the merge that's happening this summer?
Yeah, before we go onto Ethereum, this point that Scotty is raising about the validation node structure, I think the point he's making here is that increasingly there's a differentiation among validator nodes in terms of specific roles that they can be assigned. So we're actually this is a very good transition to Wednesday's discussion when we have our guest speaker, Henry Enos, who's really kind of an expert on this and set up the whole Go chain validation node network that he's going to be talking about. But I think in general, keep in mind how there's an increasing sophistication and differentiation in terms of how you assign specific kinds of roles for validator nodes within a network.
Absolutely. So when the transition from Ethereum happens from proof of work to proof of stake, the beacon chain is what is responsible for coordinating what nodes do what on the new network. So you can see here that there's three specific ones. There's sharding nodes, there's going to be block creating nodes, and there's also validation nodes. So if that makes sense, the better organized the beacon chain can coordinate which nodes do what, depending on computing power, depending on what is freed up. I mean, so right now, everything happens one by one, block by block. But in the future, you can distribute that responsibility depending on what situation fits best, and that'll help with congestion and gas prices on the network. All right, so that was just something I kind of wanted us to think about, and how we're moving into the future of more sophisticated blockchains and how they can better utilize computing power to be more efficient. I really wanted to get your guys' thoughts on any ideas what industry generates the most revenue right now. Is it movies, music, or gaming?
Gaming by far.
Oh man, you guys are smart. So
I'm sorry.
it more than doubles up the combination of music and box office, which, I mean, I don't know about you guys, it blows my mind because everyone listens to music. I feel like everyone watches movies. I don't know that, like, a good amount of people do play video games, but not as many as consuming movies and music. And I think the real driver behind this is that the music industry's business model is just terrible. I mean, streaming is not sustainable moving forward. If we look at the history of music revenues over time, it peaked back when they had compact discs. And there were physical objects that people could buy. I mean, even though we're seeing somewhat of a resurgence right now, a lot of that is driven by vinyls are becoming more and more popular these days. I mean, people like to own and have things. They don't, you know, there's not as much profit in just consuming. People like that ownership and to show their friends and to tell people. I mean, when we contrast that with the video game industry, which has been phenomenal in how they've been monetizing things better, there's been a massive growth in, especially looking at Fortnite and Call of Duty, all these different video game platforms. They're releasing things that people like to own. People love spending money on skins and different guns that they can own and you know, things they can show off to their friends online. You know, a lot of us have been researching decentralized video game companies, and it's the same play to earn. They have better business models that reward people investing time in it compared to the music and the movie industry right now. Any other thoughts on how there's that differential?
I think that's why there's a big market now for Web3 for the blockchain companies in the music industry.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what like if already a few companies that do it. There are like a lot of rising companies that like try to like be the new Spotify, but like, yeah, like having more also equal pay for the music producers.
Absolutely. Things can be far more equitable than they are right now. And in fact, I'm going to go back to this. Of this tiny music revenue, what percent do we think actually goes to musicians right now?
5%. Yeah.
Any other guesses?
Or 15 to 30, 15 to 20 or something.
It's so I've seen some different argues. Most of them are around 12%, and oftentimes less. That number is actually skewed a lot because there's bigger artists that have leverage. Say The Weeknd, he might be able to negotiate 50% or 60% of his revenues, but a smaller independent musician might be at the mercy of these record labels and sign on for 2% or 5% royalties. So they really, it's a predatory industry right now, and it has a lot of potential to change in the future. A company called Royal has the mission statement they want to invest in artists and you can actually own your favorite music. And they go over royalties very, very well. Some of the key features and benefits: Royal redefines music ownership by enabling anyone to invest in music as an asset class and own rights in songs. Artists can release songs as limited NFT drops on the platform. They're currently minted on Ethereum and Polygon, and right now they're pursuing other side chains as well as layer 2 solutions to keep transaction prices low if they can. So the big contrast is a typical music NFT manifests itself as a digital collectible purely to support artists. So if I were to buy an album art of something on OpenSea, it'd be something I could show off on Twitter or on Discord, and it's cool. I'm happy to support an artist, but it doesn't really have any utility. Royal's limited digital assets, LDAs, are NFTs that give fans real ownership in music rights, and these NFT drops represent royalty ownership. So we'll get into that a little bit. Just to go over again how it works, the artists use Royal to sell royalty ownership in their songs and give collectors access to special perks. Collectors can buy royalty ownership in songs directly from their favorite artists in the form of these tokens on the platform. And when that happens, both of them can rise because collectors claim royalties for music after they've accrued, and artists grow because when you've bought the royalty to a song, I think you might tell some of your friends, hey, check out this artist that I was listening to. You know, I remember 4 years ago, I don't know if anyone here listens to Brockhampton, but I found them, I was like one of the first 10,000 people listening to them on Spotify, and I was like, man, they're gonna blow up, I just know it. If only there was a way I could have invested in them back then and purchased maybe the royalty to one of their first songs or an album drop that I was really excited about, we both could have thrived financially as a result of it. So that's something I think about moving forward. Has anyone here heard of Untitled? Are they any good?
They're so good. I have this one of my favorite songs is by them. So
nice. Well, if you had any interest, tomorrow they're doing an NFT drop, and we can kind of see how this works in function. So right now, this NFT drop, they're offering 20% of the streaming royalties for everything across every platform: Spotify, Apple Music. I don't know what else, it might be Tidal if that's still a thing. So for $199, you can purchase tokens that represent 0.04% of the royalties. If you want to go to $4.99, you can get 0.15% ownership per token, and it guarantees you general admission tickets to a Trident show of your choice, as well as exclusive content. And then if you want to spend $1,000, you can have 0.4% of that royalty, and you get VIP tickets, backstage access to general admission tickets, as well as exclusive content. So the utility in this is that not only do you collect royalties on a monthly basis for having these NFTs, but it also gives you exclusive perks with these artists as well. And the other great thing it does, it leaves 80% of the royalty to actually go to the artists. So it is really transformational stuff, and you should check it out tomorrow. I think this is a little outdated. I think it's tomorrow at 3 o'clock if you had any interest. But if I happen to purchase one of these and I decided I'm not that interested, it was something I bought hastily, they're transferable. You can sell them on OpenSea. They're NFTs that you can list anywhere, and they have gone for these specific prices. So they're working with a lot of different artists that are doing different kind of NFT drops. When we look at some of their competitors in the space, Royalty Exchange is actually the world's largest royalty marketplace, and that has its own integrated exchange with very, very unique listings. One that I saw, it was Jamie Foxx vocal credits from 2000 to 2005. So it was any song that he had written or any vocal performance he had over that time span, you could purchase into the rights for that. And it acts sort of similar to a bond in that sense, if you can think about that. It was listed for $20,000. It's been paying out $2,000 annually for the last 15 years, and it fully appreciates, and the contract goes away in 15 years. So the marketplace can price exactly what that would, in theory, go for, depending on what kind of a market risk rate there is. So if that's similar to a bond in that sense, you can invest in music in the same way now that you could invest in a more traditional stock market offering. Songvest, it does something very similar, and they're actually led by the ex-CEO of Royalty Exchange, which I thought was interesting. And one thing that they do that is very interesting, they also have their own integrated exchange with advances, and you can retain ownership with a loan that pays itself off. So if I was to purchase that Jamie Foxx vocal credit for $20,000, I could get a loan for $5,000 as long as I deposit the royalties. And the royalties that I would have collected is what pays off that loan over time, if that makes sense. Pretty incredible stuff. So you can use these royalties not only as an income stream, as a way to invest in your favorite artist, but you can also use them as collateral toward getting funding. I mean, think about if you're an independent musician and you had a big song that you minted and it went great, but you're strapped for cash. You could list the royalties from that song to facilitate a loan that could help you develop your next album or your next release, or maybe help you go on tour or something like that. So it opens up the opportunities for independent artists a lot. Any questions on kind of the music industry in general and how these all intersect?
So I'm just wondering if an artist was signed to a label, would they not make it so that you're not allowed to do something like this? Because they would own your songs.
So oftentimes that is the situation that artists face themselves in. I mean, so when I discussed that you get 80% of those royalties, that's after that's after it's already been taken by the record label. So what this hopefully in the future will allow artists is, the reason that record labels exist is they're needed to market songs, they're needed to list them, they're needed to upfront give you money to facilitate. But oftentimes people nowadays can make songs on their computer, on their laptop. You can release them on different platforms yourselves. We don't need these massive bloated record labels to be the middlemen leeching money from creators anymore. You can produce your own music, you can market yourself on your Instagram, your socials, and then you can list your singles as NFTs on the platform that you want.
On that same line of questioning, Scotty, if you had to guess, how do you think this is going to impact Apple or Spotify's business models? Would they take like 30%?
Yeah, I don't think that it will necessarily erase them, because I think what we can relate this back to the video game industry and how free-to-play games are the dominant revenue generator for all these big companies. Oftentimes you'll be giving away the content to people to get them engaged, to get them having fun, and then on the back end you offer exclusive ownership such as skins or guns, or in this case you offer the music for close to free, as Spotify and as these streaming platforms do nowadays. But on the back end you can offer this exclusive ownership that people can brag about with their friends, or have a Twitter handle. I'd love to have a music NFT as my profile picture on Discord or something like that.
Isn't Spotify already kind of hopping on the bandwagon of having like NFTs?
I think they are, and it'll be really interesting to see how they kind of all shake down in this way. Yeah, very interested to see the future of the industry for sure. Anything else we had thought about? So I guess the larger thing that I'm looking at is how much this business model innovation is truly transforming things. when we often talk about to be transformational, you can't just be 5 or 10% better or even 20% better. You need to be twice or 3 times as good, and that's exactly what this has the opportunity to do. When we look at the traditional record industry model, you can see that record labels are taking roughly 70% of all the revenue of music, leaving 20% for the streaming services and 10% for the musicians. Obviously, these are rough estimates, and there's lots of different sources, but this is more or less the distribution that we can see. When we transform it and we give the power back to the artists to mint NFTs and to own their own resources, musicians can take 70% of their record labels. I mean, look at the example we saw in that one single that is being released. They're getting 80% of all the proceeds from these royalties, leaving 10% for the record labels, completely flipping things, and then 15% to streaming services, with services like Royalty Exchange, and Songvest being able to take just 5 to 10% for facilitating the network effect. Awesome. So, if we got any questions about any of these businesses or anything else, I'd love to field them.
Is Brave a public company?
No, they're private. Okay. So that's, again, one of the kind of things we have to weigh is that we do have to trust them to a certain degree. And they've been caught, not acting as though we always wanted them. There were a few things where they said it was a software glitch, but people were like, that's doesn't seem like a software glitch. So when you have these centralized companies, there's always going to be some level of trust with them. But kind of as the CEO was saying, you need big centralized company to be able to process all of the software, the updates that a lot of these applications require in the future. So it's kind of a balance on where you can land in the spectrum of centralization versus decentralization.
But their browsers like, I guess, way more like decentralized because it's open source. Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. So it's open source, so you can see exactly what's going on behind the scenes. Oftentimes, a lot more than what Chrome offers, for example. And it's built on top of open source software as well, Chromium that Google does as well.
Do you know if they're going public at all?
I don't know. They haven't said anything to it. They were started in, I think, 2014, 2015. So they're still a very, very young company. So it'll be interesting to see the direction they go in. Lena, was there anything?
Oh yeah, I'm just gonna make a comment. I really like this. It's really informative, really real time. Because there was a lot of these things that have come up in the recent week, having conversations with people, and now I'm like, okay, now I feel more equipped to have the general knowledge of stuff that's actually interesting, and it was really captivating, and I love your enthusiasm, so it was really good.
Thank you, appreciate it. Any other questions? Anything ready, Professor?
Yeah, well, I just wanted to congratulate you, first of all, that was amazing. And early on in your presentation, you were talking about, moving from Web 2 to Web 3, people owning their data, and recently I've been looking into Tesla, and I've just been asking myself, why is Tesla so valuable? Why is the market cap so big? Why is it making so much money? And after just a little bit of research, I found out that they're actually more of a data collector / harvester than an automotive company, because every mile or every left turn you make on your Tesla, they map it out, and that's going to be the future of self-driving vehicles. So I thought that was interesting, and yeah.
Yeah, on that same note, notice how all of the companies that Scotty was analyzing, notice how they have in common a particular focus on either B2C or B2B2C distribution models. In other words, a lot of the value that these Web 3.0 companies are leveraging comes from redesigning how you distribute content, and also have the consumers engaging in the processing of content based on these disrupting these traditional B2C models. That's what they kind of all have in common, including Filecoin, which, as Mady pointed out, has its roots kind of in that peer-to-peer BitTorrent play, from streaming music. So I think that gives you some general insight into how a lot of this Web 3.0 disruption is really kind of focused on this B2C distribution, which is enabled by these software technologies that basically allow you to redesign how that content is delivered.